Hello students, in this video I'm going to teach you how to make questions in English or how to frame questions in English. Usually we have two types of questions in English. There are yes or no questions and WH questions. Let us see. As I said, we have two basic types of questions. The first type is yes or no questions. And the second type is WH questions. So this type 1, like yes or no questions, we make use of be forms, do forms, have forms, and modal verbs to frame these yes or no questions. And the second type, that is WH questions, we make use of question words to frame these questions. Question words like what, when, where, etc. So we have two types of questions, yes or no questions and WH questions. Yes or no questions are framed by using be forms, do forms, have forms, and modal verbs. WH questions are formed by making use of question words like what, when, where, etc. Let us take the first type of questions. How we frame yes or no questions by making use of these be forms, do forms, have forms, and modal verbs. So the first type of questions are yes or no questions. And this, to frame these yes or no questions, as I said you, we'll be using be forms, do forms, have forms, and modal verbs. Let us take the first form, that is be form. So what are the words that come under be forms? See here, am, is, are, was, were. So these words come under be forms, and am, is, are used in present tense, was, were are used in past tense. Let us take the second form, that is do forms. Do, does, did are the words which come under do forms. Do, does we use in present tense, and did we use in past tense. Like the third form of the verbs, have forms, and has, have, had. These three words comes under have forms. Now we have one more form, that is modal verbs like can, will, may, must, ought to, have to, shall, could, would, might, should. So all these forms we make use to frame yes or no questions. So be forms, do forms, have forms, and modal verbs are used to frame yes or no questions. Now let us see how we make questions using be forms. So here, when we are making a yes or no question, we put the verb be at the beginning of a sentence. Let us see with an example. Here, he is from England. This is a statement. So if you want to make this statement into a question, so what are the changes that happen and what are the things that you have to focus on? Like usually in a statement, subject takes the first place and it is followed by a verb. But in a question, verb takes the first place and it is followed by the subject. This particular change you have to remember when you are making a question. Now, when someone asks you such a question, like how to respond in speaking, if someone asks you such a question, how to respond? There are two ways to respond. That is, we may respond or we can respond in a short way or we can respond in a long way. Means the answer, we can make a short answer or we can make a long answer. So see the example. Am I looking tired? This is a very simple question. Am I looking tired? For this question, we can answer in two ways. Either we can say in a very short way like yes, you are, or we can make it little longer like yes, you are looking tired. And see the second example. Is he coming? This is also a very simple question. Is he coming? So we have framed these questions by using be forms that also you have to identify. Is he coming? So how to respond to such a question? We can make it in like very simply using a single word no, or we can make it a short answer like no, he isn't, or we can make it like little long. No, he isn't coming. So, if someone asks you such questions, the way you can respond to them, it might be in a short way or a long way using single word or a group of words. Now, let us see the rules for making questions with the do forms. So, when we are making a solo question, we put the verb do or does at the beginning of a sentence, as like it is same like be forms only, but here one thing we have to remember: we use do forms to frame questions when there is no auxiliary verb in a sentence. That means when there is no other verb, like no other auxiliary verb in a sentence, then we make use of these do forms to frame the question. Let us see with an example. Here, take the first thing. You like ice cream. You is the subject, like is the verb. This is the remaining part of the sentence. So, how to make a question without an auxiliary verb? Directly, we can't interchange this and we make like you ice cream. That won't make sense. So, how to frame a question? We have to make use of do forms. Here, you is the second person, and so I'm using do here to frame the question. See, do you like ice cream? So I place a do at the beginning of the sentence, and this is followed by the subject you and the remaining sentence as it is. So to frame a question, we are putting do form at the beginning of the sentence. Let us see one more example. She gets up early. She is the third person singular. Usually, with the third person singulars, that is he, she, it, we use does. Okay, so this change you have to remember. Like we use does with third person singular. As we have used she here, I've taken the does, the form does here to make a question. Does she get up early? When you use does in a sentence, there is no need to add s to the verb. S to the verb. It is implied. So, does she get up early? So, when you are using a third person singular, then we have to take does form. When you are using the other persons, we can make use of do to frame the questions. Then, if someone asks you such a question, how to answer? Do we know each other? Do we know each other? So we have few responses here. We simply say yes, or we can say yes, we do, because this is the verb we have used here to frame a question. Yes, we do. Or we can give a long answer saying yes, we know each other. And see one more example. Does it? It is the third person singular. So I have used does as the helping, like the verb to frame the question. Does it work loudly? Now, the possible answers are no. We can simply say no, or we can say no, it doesn't, or we can say no, it doesn't work loudly. So, these are the possible answers, or these are the possible responses that we can give to such questions. Now, let us see the rules for making questions with have forms. See here, when we are making a no question, with have forms, we put the verb have at the beginning of a sentence. It is similar, like it is same as for be forms and have forms. See the example. This is a sentence like statement. You have finished your homework. So when you want to frame a question, this helping verb, we have two verbs here in this sentence. This is helping verb, that means auxiliary verb, and this is main verb. And this have is used as an auxiliary verb, and this is the main verb. So we have two verbs. If you get such a sentence, like how to frame a question. So the same way, like have, the form have, I mean like the auxiliary verb comes first and it is followed by the subject, and the remaining part, as it is, it comes. There is no change in that. So the thing what you have to remember is only this interchanging of subject and verb. That means, like, in the first verb takes first place and the subject takes the second place when you are framing a question. And when such questions are put, like how to reply, have you solved the problem? Have you solved the problem? Here, have form is used to make the question. And now the response to this question would be like, yes, I have, because we have used have. So the response also be like the same. Yes, I have. Or you can say, yes, I have solved the problem. See the next example. Has he stayed with us? No, he hasn't. Or we can say, no, he hasn't stayed with us. So when you are like when someone asks you a question using this have forms, the response also, in the response also, we have to make use of the have forms. The same way for do forms and be forms also. And now let us see the rules for making questions with models. So when we are making a yes or no question, we put the modal verb at the beginning of a sentence, the same way as we did for have forms, be forms, and do forms. So see here in this sentence also we have two verbs. One is the auxiliary verb, the other is the main verb. This modal verb is used as the auxiliary verb here. Of course, when we just make it a sentence, what we do is this auxiliary verb takes the first place and it is followed by the subject. The remaining part of the sentence would be the same. So, may I visit you tomorrow? This would be the question structure. Now, if someone asks you a question using these models, can we go to the party? Here, can is the model I have taken. Can we go to the party? So, what would be the possible reply is yes, we can, because the question started with a modal verb can. So, the response would be like yes, we can, or yes, we can go to the party. Now, see the second question. Would you like to drink tea? Here, I've used would, the modal verb would, to frame the question. Would you like to drink tea? The possible reply would be like, no, I would not. No, I'd not like to drink tea. So, this is a short answer and this is a long answer. So, this is how we can answer to such questions. Now, let us take the second type of questions, that is WH questions. So we have lot of words in English, we have lot of question words in English, and by making use of these question words, we frame the questions. Let us quickly see some of the question words with which we can frame the questions. Who? So, who refers to a person, and where? Where refers to a place, when refers to time, and why refers to reason, how refers to manner, and what refers to thing, and which refers when you are referring to some choice, and whose refers like to whom something belongs to, and what time also is a reference of time, what kind is a reference of kind, how many and how much. These two things refers to the quantity, but how many is used with the countable things and how much is used with the uncountable things. How long refers to distance, how often refers to frequency of time, how far also refers to the distance, and how old refers to the age. Let us quickly see the examples what we have given here. Who is that person, that man? So who refers to Peter? Like this refers to a person. Where refers to a place. When did he arrive? When refers to time, afternoon. Why did you leave? Why refers to reason, because I was tired. How did you go? The mode of transport, by car. What are you doing? So, about something like nothing. Which car is better? The red one. When you have a choice, we use which. Whose book is this? So it's mine. So the thing belongs to someone. What time did he call? So it refers to time, that is at 7. What kind of car is it? A hybrid. It refers to a kind. How many beds are there? So it refers to the count, 3. How much tea is there? So it refers to the quantity, a lot. How long did you stay? Duration, 2 weeks. How often do you go? Frequency, every day. How far is the town? So it's of distance, 1 mile away. How old is your sister? It refers to the age. She is 27. Now let us see in detail how to form WH questions. So what is the structure that we have to follow? So there are two ways to form the WH questions, that is with an auxiliary and without an auxiliary verb. So let us see the first one with an auxiliary. So the structure would be like this. First we get a WH word, then the auxiliary verb, then the subject, and then the main verb. Let us see in an example. Like auxiliary verbs means here they are helping verbs and they are not the main verbs. So we have two verbs in a sentence. One is the main verb, the other is the helping verb. So auxiliary verbs comes under helping verbs. Common auxiliary verbs include. So what are those auxiliary verbs that we can add here is be forms, do forms, have forms, and modal verbs also. So let us see in an example. What do you do for a living? So this is a question with a WH word. So the structure, when you just look at the structure, what is the WH word? So it is at the beginning of the sentence. Do is the auxiliary verb. So it is followed, and you is the subject. Subject. So it is followed after verb, and again do, this is the main verb, and the remaining part of the sentence. So usually when you frame a WH question with an auxiliary verb, the structure, the order of the words would be like this. First we get the WH word, and then auxiliary verb, and then subject, and then main verb, and then the remaining part of the sentence. Let us see one more example. Why should we read books? So why is the question word, should is the auxiliary verb, we is the subject, read is the main verb. So here the structure, you could see it. So after the question word, we got the auxiliary verb, and it is followed by subject, and it is followed by the main verb. Now let us see one more example. When is she coming? When is the WH word. Is auxiliary, she is the subject, coming is the main verb. So this would be the structure to frame a WH question word with an auxiliary verb. So if it is without an auxiliary, then how? So the structure would be like this. So at the beginning you get WH word, and immediately main verb follows. So what happened to Peter? What is the WH word? Happened is the main verb. So immediately after the WH word, we got a main verb here and the remaining part of the sentence. The structure of this type of question would be like this. And see one more example. Who won the game? Who is the WH word? One is the main verb. So immediately after the WH word, we got the main verb. Let us see one more example. Who gave you this present? So who gave you this present? Who is the WH word? Gave is the main verb. So immediately after the WH word, we got the main verb. So we have two ways of framing these WH questions, with auxiliary verbs and without auxiliary verbs. Now let us review what we have learned so far. There are two types of questions. First one is yes or no question. The other one is WH questions. Yes or no questions are formed with helping verbs such as do forms, be forms, have forms, or modals. Now, we frame yes or no questions by putting auxiliary verb at the beginning of the sentence and end with a question mark. Let us see that in the example. Do you speak English? Do is the like auxiliary verb. You is the subject and speak is the main verb. So first we got to form, then subject, then the main verb, and then the remaining part of the sentence. Now, the second type of questions are WH question words. WH questions are formed with question words like what, when, etc. We frame WH questions in two ways, with question words at the beginning of the sentence followed by a helping verb and a main verb, or only a main verb. Let us see in the example. What is he doing here? What is he doing there? So, in this, the question word is what, and we have a helping verb is, and then it is followed by a subject, and then the main verb, and then the remaining part of the sentence. Let us see one more example. Without helping verb, we have framed a question. Here we have a helping verb and a main verb, but here in this sentence we have only one main verb. So immediately after the WH word, we have placed the main verb and the remaining of part of the sentence. So this is how we frame the questions. And of course, I think that you understood the topic. Thank you. Thank you very much.